Well, hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Ultimate Wellness Group Transformation Tuesday. We truly have a wonderful, wonderful show for you today. A surprise, the greatest love story ever. Now, that is my opinion, right? But after you all finish listening to this show, I pray that you understand why I say that, and I pray that you agree. Um, it has been one heck of a 2020, right? And we have entered a different year, a new year. And a lot of times we take this opportunity to try new things, do new things, to have a plan, things to go better. And today's show, I think, is a huge aspect of that for us all. Um, right now, for those who don't know, we are reading two books in the Ultimate Wellness Group Book Club. One book is How to Eat to Live by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and the other book is The Unapologetic Black Guide to Mental Health by Rita Walker. Two very powerful books. We are, of course, reading 4 pages a day in The Unapologetic Guide, and we're reading 5 pages a day in How to Eat to Live. And to date, we are experiencing some wonderful information. And the biggest part of it is that we're learning how and discussing how to apply what we are reading and what we are learning. And so that is kind of the backdrop that I wanted to just present today, is that I think it's going to be a beautiful show. I'm sure it's going to be a beautiful show, but I want us to listen, to learn, to really meditate, to concentrate on what we can take from today and apply to our lives. Because in the Black community, in my professional assessment and evaluation, we run away from having difficult conversations, the type of conversations that would help heal us and help return our families back to a better ability to exist in peace. We kind of throw those conversations away. The conversations about rape and molestation and child abuse and divorce and not taking care of children and alcoholism and, like literally mental health, like my uncle or my grandma or cousin, whatever, is crazy, right? And so that is what today's show is about. It's more than just about the greatest love story ever. It's about us learning the ability to raise our ability to look at, evaluate, assess our mental health, and then do the things that it takes to get better. I know that was a long introduction, but I had to lay that base. So in the name of Allah, the beneficent, the merciful, I bear witness there is no God but Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad is his messenger. I further bear witness that Master Father Muhammad came in the person of God. That's what we believe. And he taught a man named the Honorable Elijah Muhammad with the book that is the foundation of the show, How to Eat to Live. That man taught many powerful men, one of those being Minister Louis Farrakhan. And their names I greet you in the words of peace of Assalamu Alaikum. I'm not going to take long today because we have our wonderful guest already laying in the cut, ready to come on in. But I wanted to say this, for those of you who have been following the show and know about the loss of my daughter, I wanted to just ask you all if you would take a look at the post that my wife put up today on her page, Tawana Tolbert Muhammad. If you get a chance, please check it out. I think that is a beautiful testimony from my wife on the journey that we're going through, right? The journey of healing, the journey of being able to walk the steps of coming to a more healthy place after losing a child. And we can use these ideas and use these things that we learn for a death of any person, right? But from a perspective of what I understand in my studies, losing a child is the hardest, the most difficult. It is number one on the stress level of any problem that a person can have. And so as she continues to go through her healing, as I continue to go through my healing, as my family goes through our healing, I like to share those things because I think that's another aspect that in the Black, brown, and indigenous societies, we don't tend to do well. We kind of move away and get busy and divert our attention, but don't really put in the work that it takes to work our way out of the bereavement and the grief and the sadness, right? And so it's very important. So I would appreciate if you all would take a little time, read it, keep her in our prayers, keep us in your prayers, and send her a little love with a little message if you like. Okay. So I'm going to give a couple of shout outs, and we're going to jump directly into the show because the greatest love story ever told is coming up. Charles X, Linda Muhammad, Erica Perez, EP Hope, LaRoya Muhammad, Kimberly Harris, Shaolin Soldier, Sharon Bellinger, 8 Electronics, Sabira Muhammad, I said that, Edna Taylor Shepherd, and Priscilla Timmons. Thank all of you for coming in. Wa alaikum salam, greetings, good evening, whatever it is that is our way that we greet each other. This is the universal place to come today, and a safe place, and we're about to have this conversation. So without any further delay, I'm gonna go ahead and bring my brothers in, and we're gonna start this conversation. Reginald Keith Edmond and Carlton Streeter, how are my brothers doing this afternoon?
All right.
You kind of breaking up. Okay, I can hear you now. We're good.
Who's breaking up? Keith?
You're good now. You're good.
Everybody good?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So everybody, I said the greatest love story ever, and you see 3 black men on here. So I just want to begin this beautiful conversation with the fact that the first time I ever heard my father tell me I love you was 2 days before I graduated from medical school. So I literally thought he loved me because of the fact that I graduated from medical school. But these brothers right here, I tell them I love them because I've grown past that insecurity of saying that to another black man. And so as we go through the show, you'll see what I'm talking about. But these brothers right here are a few years older than me. And so they were guys that I looked up to as I was coming up in Riverside, California. And it wasn't one of those type of things where it was like a role model that I understood at that point. But coming up, I was, looking up to the guys that spent time around me, gave me some of their attention, athletes, but still got in the books. And so these are the type of brothers that I was looking up. We've had a friendship for 40 plus years. And so I'm going to let them introduce themselves and talk about how they met. And maybe they'll drop a little bit about how they remember meeting me, but it's mostly about them because they're about the love story. So go ahead, Brother Keith, you're going to go first, correct?
I'll go first. Met Carlton. I was probably in the 3rd grade. We were on a little league baseball team, and his uncle was the coach. And Robert Gray was there, and we used to call him Fastball Streeter. And we've been, best friends ever since 3rd grade. He was in the 4th grade. I was in the 3rd grade.
And that was,
so was that
8 or 9 years old.
I was 9 years old.
8. So we currently are
I'm 56. So
Boyd wanted Akili. Boyd wanted you to send him the link.
Okay.
So I'm currently 57. Keith's 56. So that would be about over 40 years that we've been friends.
Older than Jesus' first pair of tennis shoes. That's
exactly.
what it is.
Yeah.
Right. And so, Keith and I, we have a lot in common. We're both athletes. We're both competitive. Just growing up, we both wanted to get out of the current situations where we were. We didn't grow up with money or anything like that. We just had enough. So I guess we just grew up hustling, and we both realized that, the only way out, and that I can give that to my mom, Gwen Streeter. The only way out was education. And so I'm the youngest of 7. So my father died when my mom was 7 months pregnant with me, and I'm the youngest. So in 1963, she had 7 children, youngest 7. Father just died, and she raised us all. And all of us but one went to college. And this was in the 60s where black wasn't popular. So I think she did a very good job. But as far as Keith and I, we've always been tight. Even though I left and went to college, we were still good friends, and the friendship was just always there.
Yeah.
Yeah. In my youth, looking at them as the older guys, that's what I did. My father knew Carlton's father and his grandfather, and used to speak about them very highly, in our house when I was coming up. And Keith, I remember him as an athlete. I don't remember Streeter as an athlete. I remember Streeter. I'm not trying to say to put him down.
No,
I'm just saying that I met Keith through like basketball, and I knew Streeter like through other things. But Streeter and I wound up going through college together, and that's when our relationship really flourished. But what kind of things like brought you all together from that high school, college, before we settled down and started getting families? What were the type of things that you all were doing together? What was bringing you all together, in addition to what you already mentioned about a lot of things in the sports?
Mm-hmm.
Our friendship, man. We literally hung out every day.
Yeah.
I mean, when you think of movies like Cooley High, the old school movies, that was us, man.
Right.
I mean, we ran the streets.
Yeah.
Not we ran the
just
streets. We hustled. We ran women. I mean, we was out there, man.
Be honest with you. What we did was we played sports, we chased women, and we gambled. That's what Keith and I mean, just being honest, that's what we did. We all and he and I both loved it. And that was our thing. That was our camaraderie. I mean, that's what we did. So, and school was important. So when we grew up on the east side, we didn't smoke, we didn't drink, we didn't do any of that. And we were few, we were the few that didn't do it growing up on the east side. Those three things, that's all we did. And I think that's what kept us together is that's what we were then at that time, growing up.
And we had a few other friends too that we hung out with, like with Boyd and a couple other people that we hung with. But when people say your peers, you do what your peers do. Right. We kind of bonded together, and we wasn't getting in trouble. We wasn't robbing, gang banging. We wasn't doing none of that stuff, man. We was just really good kids, really, but just chasing and hustling. And that's what we did, And so we did that just growing up from elementary school to junior high school. Man, let me tell you, I remember we had a party one time, man. I'm gonna give examples of hustling, okay? Streeter was the only person on the east side that had a pool. Okay, so we decided to have a party outside in the pool, right? We charged people to come in. We went and bought probably two 12-packs, put a bunch of ice in the trash can, charged everybody $3 to get in, okay? Wait until the party was packed, and then we called the police to shut the party down. I mean, we just did stuff like that. We was hustling.
Not that, I mean, but that's being honest. That's who we were back then, and we just had a bond, and it's always been there.
One thing I do is this: our friends. We had one thing. Our friends. One thing we did do is we always held each other. We were each other's gatekeepers, man. We held each other accountable. That if one person start to stray off or do something, we would check them. We let them know, hey man, what you doing, man? We don't do that. Yeah. You not going to class. We don't do that.
And that was one of the things that you all did for me, because I can say that, I wasn't, like I said earlier, I'm not at their same age group. They got me about 3 years. But so I wasn't at those parties and things like that. But what I did take from their example is that when I went to college, I wasn't a drinker. I didn't drink or smoke. I was trying to take care of my body because I wanted to be an athlete as well. And so that was kind of some of the things that rubbed off on me from you guys, was those type of examples. And, you all know what the gang life was. And that was probably by the time you all were late in high school. But when I was in junior high, the gangbanging thing was all over Southern California. And that was really attractive to me. But it was people like you all that always, of course, my parents, number one, but brothers like you all as well, that kept me from going all the way deep into that stuff, because I knew there was a limit from the parental reality. And then the dudes that really, like you all and Rick and Mike, that really had, and what's the other brother's name? The preacher now. You know what I'm talking about?
From where?
He's from Riverside. He's in you all's class. God, Doug, I'll think of his name in a minute. But anyway, you all were the ones that always, you pop up beside the head and you would say something to us, but it was always like, okay, the big homie trying to make sure we're good. They're trying to look out for us. And that was the thing. By the time I got to college and looked at some of the decisions that I would made, is because I had those examples outside of my house, which were great. So that's wonderful, man. So now we're going to go into the family life. So Keith, you're going to start off. So talk about like when you met your first wife, and how you the process of you having your child and all that, when years and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I met her around 19, maybe 89, around then. Maybe 1990. After we started dating for a short period of time, got engaged. I thought it was gonna be a long engagement, to be honest with you. But then she got pregnant. So that moved up. So.
Well, you gotta talk about it. Her getting pregnant was a miracle because
yes.
she only had one ovary.
She only had one ovary.
So she
told me she couldn't get pregnant. She told me she couldn't have children. So, we didn't use protection because I thought, she can't have kids. So she gets pregnant and has a child in 91, July 28th. We named him Reggie. And so, that's when we started our family, and at that time, Streeter lived in Texas.
Right.
You still in Texas?
Right.
Then Streeter was in Texas.
Yeah.
He was still in Texas, but we stayed close. Talked about it. He came out for the wedding. He's in the wedding.
Right.
And so I mean, we maintained that friendship. But he came out being very supportive, and our families were like extended families.
Right.
So we had a very close family. We were almost identical. We had one child, wife. He had one child, wife.
So let me tell you. So what happens is in 95.
Check it with your wife.
Yeah, I'm trying to see when we moved back to California. So what happened was we moved back to California. I was married with one son. Keith was married one son. The difference of years were 2 years apart between our sons. Now, once I moved back to California, we became really close. And I can say this, I was closer to Keith and Boyd by that time than I was with my brothers and sisters because of the age and what we went through. And my family and Keith's family holidays would spend holidays together. So Thanksgiving, we go, my family, when I say my family, me, my wife and son, Keith, his wife and son, we go up in the mountains in San Diego for Thanksgiving. So for the time we lived in California, our families were like this. So at that time, our sons were being raised with each other.
They called each other brother or cousins.
Right.
They called me Uncle Keith. He called him Uncle Carlton, Auntie Annette, Auntie Consuela. So we were raised as family members. We were raised as family members, and had the key to the house. He'd check on the house. It was just, you could trust him with money, house, whatever we had, whatever I had, he was welcome to. And vice versa.
And so we got the families. I mean, look at the similarities, brothers and sisters. I mean, this when I mean, first of all, I know them, but when I listen to the story and the gaps and what I didn't know start to be filled in, it's almost like it was a God-made reality, right? Two friends from back in the day to get married.
Let me say this:
together, both have one son.
Neither one of our wives could have any more children.
Huh?
Neither one of our wives could have any more children.
Well, there's another example. So these things are so similar, and that's the amazing thing of it. I mean, some of these things that you all are hearing today, I'm hearing for the first time because I don't even know all of the story, but I know them well enough to know this is the greatest love story ever. So we'll continue with. All right. So there were a lot of things that happened in between these years, but let's move forward to the time when you were all. Streeter, you lived in New Jersey, and Keith, you still lived in California, but you went to New Jersey to visit, correct?
Yes. Here's what happened.
Yes.
So, Carlton lived in New Jersey, and I wanted to go visit New Jersey and New York. So spring break of 08.
Before you finish, Keith, because I'm gonna we were getting ready to move from New Jersey back to California. So before we moved, Keith was going to come out and visit us in New Jersey.
I hadn't been out there, so
he's never been to New Jersey and New York.
So spring of 2008, This is interesting because spring 2008. So I decide we're going to go. We're going to go to New Jersey. And at the time, Reggie had a new girlfriend, or he had a girlfriend, and he didn't want to go. I want to spend time with my girlfriend. And why are you taking me with my girlfriend? So I bribed him and said, look, man, I'll take you and your girlfriend to Universal Studios when we come back. Okay, I'll come in. The wife didn't want to go because she wanted to do some other stuff, like it's going to be cold back there, yada, yada. So bottom line, we all go. So we go on this trip, and we get to New Jersey on the 6th. We go to dinner, have a good time. Our son's having a great time, and we decided that we're going to go to New York, but it was going to be raining or kind of misty that day. So we decided that we're going to go to Philadelphia instead.
It was an hour away. It was closer. Philly was closer to where we lived in New Jersey than New York.
So that night, before we go to leave, Reggie's playing video games, family's playing, Wii, first time out playing Wii. We're having a great time. And I tell Reggie, I said, Reggie, do you want to go to Philly with us? Or do you want to stay with Carlton, little Carlton?
Conk.
We call him Conk. Reggie said, no, I want to stay with Conk. The wife was like, well, it's a family vacation. And I'm telling you because it plays a part later. It's a family vacation. We should be doing things as a family.
Yeah.
I said, well, Reggie wants to stay with Conk, and he wants to do things too. I'm okay with it. And I remember telling her, you have to let the boy grow up, because she would always smother him. You have to let him grow up. And she was like, well, I still think Philly has so much history, we should make him go to Philly. And I said, no, we're going to ask him again. Reggie, do you want to go with us or stay with Conk? He said, I'm going to stay with Conk. I said, then you're outvoted 2-1. And at the time, we were starting to say he needs a voice. His voice counts. He's 16 at the time.
He was how old?
He's 16.
16, okay.
16 at the time, a junior in high school. And I was telling her, how do you expect the kid to grow up unless you allow them to start making some decisions? So that's what we did. We said we can stay with Conk. So that morning, we get up, and I remember going into his room, he'd sleep, and say, hey, Red, you want to go with us one last time? And he said, no, Dad, that's okay, son, love you. Have a good day. We go in, Annette cooked us breakfast, we ate, and she's like, we should make Reggie go. I'm like, let the boy sleep, let him stay here. And we go on a trip to Philly.
I go to work in Brooklyn.
Interesting.
I was teaching in Brooklyn at the time.
So we're in Philly going, and we're doing sightseeing, and we had.
Is that you, Keely?
I'm in a friend's house. Excuse me for that.
Oh, no worries.
We all got dogs, but anyway, so I get to Philly, and we're sightseeing, and we go to lunch, and we have tickets to go see the Liberty Bell, and we're at lunch, and she says, "You're right. Reggie really didn't want to come hang out with his parents all day," and I said, "You're right." But prior to that, let me explain this to you. Prior to that, I got a phone call from Annette. Annette said, Keith, what's Reggie's phone number? And it kind of struck me as odd, but we're on a tour. So I gave her the number, but I kind of heard some distress in her voice. But I just gave her the number, and I thought to myself, I wonder if something's wrong. But I just dismissed it. I said, no, nothing could be wrong. So then, about maybe an hour later, I get a phone call from this number from New Jersey. And I work in law enforcement, by the way, okay? So I get a phone call from this number of New Jersey. I almost didn't answer, but something said, answer the phone. I answered the phone. The guy asked, was I Mr. Edmond? I said, yes. And his first words were, I'm Sergeant such and such with the New Jersey Highway Patrol. And as soon as he said New Jersey Highway Patrol, I immediately asked him, I said, is my son alive? And he paused. And he said, I need you to come back to New Jersey. And I said, no, answer my question. Is my son alive? He said, your son has been involved in a terrible car accident, and we need you to come back to New Jersey. And Consuela, ex-wife, had already walked into the Liberty Bell building. So I start yelling for her to come out. And she's looking at me like, what's wrong? What the heck is wrong with you? People saying, be quiet. And I'm talking really fast. And I'm telling them, we got to go, we got to go. And then we start rushing back. He gives me the address. And I called the hospital. He told me the hospital. And the hospital kept putting me on hold. I couldn't understand why the hospital kept placing me on hold. I tell them where I was. I tell them my son's name. And they say, oh, yes, sir, Evan, hold on. And they would leave me on hold, and then the phone would disconnect. And I'd call back. And then eventually we make it to the hospital. And we walk into the hospital, and the guy meets us at the front door. And he says, I need you to follow me. And so when he said, I need you to follow me, he didn't take us to the room. He took us to this room that said bereavement or counseling room or whatever. And I didn't want to go in that room because my mother had passed away the year before that. And they took us in the same type of room that my mother passed away. So I'm like, I'm not going in that room, man. I'm not going in that room. He said, no, you need to come in the room. And we went in the room. That's when he told us that he had passed and he was in a car accident and that he had died. And that, and that everything at that point started to move in slow motion, it seemed like. And so
let me tell
my life changed.
That's his perspective. So Keith, and I just want to ask you, at that time, did you feel like it was your fault?
I was numb at that point. Mm-hmm. I didn't start to feel like it was my fault until later.
Oh, okay. So I'm gonna start where Keith started. I was teaching in Brooklyn at the time, so I had to work that day. So I'm at work, and I get a phone call from Annette, and then she says, Conk and Reggie have been in a really bad accident. You need to come home. So now I lived in Central Jersey, and I worked in Brooklyn. So it was about an hour and a half drive for me to come home. And so just like Keith, I couldn't get any information. But one thing they told me was, they said, Reggie's at this hospital and Conk's at this hospital. So, first thing I did was I went, because it was closer, I went to the hospital that Reggie was at. And so then I asked the guy, I'm like, why are they both at two different hospitals? And then at that time, he told me that reason why Reggie is at this hospital is because they have a coroner at this hospital. Reggie's passed away. And that was at that point, that was the most hurtful thing that happened to me in my life. When my mom passed away, my mom was sick. It was over a period of time, so I was able to adjust, and she lived her life. But Reggie, and I screamed. I never cried like that before in my life. And so then I remember the guy wanted me to tell Keith and Consuela. And I said, there is no way on God's green earth that I would be able to do that. There's just no way. Now, in my mind, what happened was my son went to Prairie View the semester before. He got all D's at Prairie View, so I snatched him out of Prairie View and sent him home. And my son had a car, and I took his car away from him. And so I told him, you're not driving the car. The only place you're going to go is to school and then to work. But when Reggie came, he's with his boy, and so I decided, I'm like, all right, I'm going to let you drive, but only while Reggie's here. So then I said that to say that I had this deep hurt that this was my fault. I felt like there was no way possible that he should have been driving that car, because I said he wasn't going to drive it, and I let him drive it, and it just, there's no way possible. So then I found out that Conk had, what happens when you get hit in the head?
Amnesia.
He had a concussion. So, well, let me finish the Keith story. So Keith gets to the hospital, right? And I told him, man, I can't do this. There is no way possible that I would be able to do this. So Keith comes, and I go to a different part of the hospital on the same floor. But then all of a sudden, I hear him scream. Like, I heard him scream, him and Consuela both. I heard them scream. And it was, again, the most hurtful thing that has ever happened to me in my life up until that time. And so I at that point, I don't even remember what happened, because my wife, I told her, I'd go over here with Reggie, you go see about Conk. She was going to go see about Conk. And so after that, I don't even, and Keith, maybe you remember. Do you remember what happened after that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it goes to when you say hurt and all that. I remember walking out, and when I walked out of the room, I saw you there.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing I said, man, you came up and you gave me a hug. And then I said, come with me to go see Reggie.
Mm-hmm.
And you said, man, I can't go see his body. I can't. And I remember thinking, I can't believe you won't go with me.
Right.
And
for me, there was just, I couldn't see it. When my mom passed away, I didn't walk by the casket. I've never, anybody passed away, me and dead bodies, I can't do it. But then for me to actually go in there with you, I felt responsible. I felt my son was responsible. He's laying on that slab. There's no way on God's green earth that I had the strength in order to go in there. Go ahead.
So let me pause you all just for a second. I'm gonna give it right back to you. See, and this is why I said at the beginning of the show, brothers and sisters, that I really want us to listen. I want us to really take and soak these things in, right? Because what we're listening to are two people, as we said, that were friends at this point for 20 plus years, right?
Right.
And when I listened to Keith explain his side of the story, and I listened to Streeter tell his side of the story, we're talking about the different aspects of life, how you were raised, how did your parents deal with things, how did they train you, what kind of experiences did you have in your life? All of these different things start to mold us into how we react to things, how we do things, how we initiate at things in our life. And so as we're reading this unapologetic guide to Black mental health, we have to, as I said before, have these type of conversations. It's not necessarily an easy conversation. This is definitely wasn't an easy walk for either one of them to go through. But the reality is that these type of conversations, I'm sure you all can see why I'm calling it the greatest love story. You can see why these guys are my friends, but it's also a reality that none of us have the ability to judge anybody. because there is no way that we can take our own experience and then turn to somebody else's experience and say, oh, you did that wrong, or that wasn't good, or God's going, no, we have so many different things. We have to be open. And so as we listen and we learn tonight, that's another thing that I think this does, is open up our ability to be more accepting of some of the things that go on around us that we don't really understand. Because as I'm listening, I'm wondering, like, I would have been very angry if I was Keith at Streeter, right? I'm not, but I would have been angry. So we're going to give it back to you all. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was. You know, but I remember hindsight, looking back, I'm glad he didn't come in because it gave me a chance to walk in the room and spend some time with Reggie by myself. And I think that my reaction might have been different having another person there.
Yeah.
Because now it's unadulterated type, you know, it's pure. And so the and I was somewhat in shock still.
Right.
But,
Can you describe that a little more? What that experience that you were having while you were in that room?
Let me go back to this. I didn't want to say this earlier because I wanted to lead up to the fact that he passed away. But when I got the call from Annette, and Annette told me what's Reggie's number, I felt like Reggie's spirit left me. I felt like I could feel his spirit leave. And I thought for a brief moment, was Reggie in a car accident and died? I thought that for a brief moment. And I said, no, I'm not accepting that. I'm not accepting that.
Right.
But I felt that. So, you know, when I went in, it made me think of experiences I had with Reggie all at once. And me and Reggie used to have this thing where I used to tell him, I used to always be afraid of having dementia. That always been my big fear because my mother had dementia. So I used to always tell Reggie, hey man, if I have dementia and you come see me, all you have to do is grab my pinky finger and do a pinky shake, and I'll know it's you. No matter what in life, I'll know it's you. So when I walked into his room and saw him there, my first reaction was to do a pinky shake with him, to let him know that I'm there. And that was pretty emotional for me, you know. The next thing I realized is that the wife at the time, she was so responded that she couldn't walk. They had to put her in a wheelchair, and they had to wheelchair her in. And when I tell you in shock, I was just really truly in shock. The emotions,
me too,
didn't really hit me till later. But I thought enough to tell the doctor when the doctor came to see us, that we needed some type of drugs to help me cope. So I asked for medication. I said, there's no way I'll be able to even function. So he subscribed me in her prescription. I want to say they gave us Ativan for some reason. I want to say Ativan. And when we drove back to Carlton's house, that was the loneliest trip ever. I mean, that drive from the hospital to his house was
to the
probably
hospital, maybe 10, 15 minutes.
to his house. You know, everything seemed dark. It seemed empty, and we were just lost. We were just lost.
Do you remember? Because I don't remember, honestly, because what I do is stuff like that. I honestly, I have to block it out of my. Do you remember what happened when you came to the house and what happened, like the conversation and how long you stayed? And
I know we stayed the night because I remember going into a business functioning mode, contacting the airlines to get a flight home, contacting different people as far as making some type of arrangements. So, you know, I remember those type of things. I remember the long flight home. I remember that the airlines and the rental car company is going to charge us a exorbitant fee for ending the trip so soon. And I tried to explain the situation to him, and I didn't go to a manager for the rental car company. And then I think I gave him the detective number because the detective came and gave us a number, and you know, but we didn't have to pay all the fees. But other than that, no, it was just a blur.
What was
But
the interaction like when you all got to the house? When you got back to the house and you were spending that evening that you found out your son had passed, what was the interaction between the two of you and you and your wives?
I don't even remember.
I don't remember.
I don't remember. I mean, honestly, I was
We
so.
cried together. My wife said we cried together. She remembers because I don't, honestly, my coping mechanism is blocking things out, is forgetting things for me.
I know it. I know we cried, and I
You know?
remember.
And that
I
said, we all cried and we just spent the whole night crying. Because
remember the
let me say
wife.
this. Let me say this. So you remember I thought it was my fault, right? So Keith and Consuela actually had an argument on whether or not Reggie should go, and Keith ended up winning. So let me tell you how the accident happened. What happened is my wife was working at home. She sent my son. She sent my son to the sandwich shop to pick up a sandwich. My son was in junior college at the time. Okay, he was in junior college at the time. So him and Reggie went to get a sandwich. Well, what happened is they decided to go to the mall. So he's coming from the mall, so now he's late to class. So since he was late to class, he's speeding. Car cuts in front of him, goes sideways. The car hits the tree on Reggie's side and kills Reggie immediately. Kant goes through, he hits the front window. He had a concussion. So Conk is at this hospital with Annette. And so I ended up going to that hospital. And you see Reggie, and Reggie, you could tell, was blunt force trauma. It was just boom, because he didn't have a lot of marks, a lot of scars, a lot of stuff. But Conk's face had glass. It was, Conk actually looked like the one that should have passed away.
Mm.
And so what happened was with Conk, he didn't know what happened because of the accident. So the next day, when he gets up, the doctor tells him, he's like, your cousin Reggie died. So Conk breaks out crying. He's like, how did it happen? And so then the doctor says, you were driving a car and you killed him. That's what the doctor said to Conk. So that's what happened. So Conk after the accident, he didn't remember anything for 3 months before. So then the next day, he forgot, he didn't know again. So we had to tell him again. He started crying again. He relit for 3 straight days that happened. 3 straight days. And we had to tell him, you were in an accident. You were driving and you were responsible for the death of Reggie. And then, he's devastated.
Well, so yeah, that's a word, I think, right there, devastation, that could take us into the next segue of this conversation, and that is, that's enough to devastate any friendship. It's devastating enough to destroy marriages.
Mm-hmm.
But what happened after then? What happened when you went back to California, Keith, and what happened with you staying in New Jersey, Streeter, with you and your wife, and then you and your wife, Keith, and
I'll go.
Talk about what happened over the next few years.
Remember, the reason why he came out there, this happened in what month, Keith?
April.
In May, we were moving to California. So in May or June of, was it the next year? I don't even remember. When did we move to California? In 2009?
Mm-hmm.
No, we moved 2008. Because I started teaching in 2009. So 3 months later, we moved to California. So what happened was we flew back. Annette and I flew back for the funeral. Keith and Consuela could not, they just couldn't function. Annette was the one who did everything for the funeral, everything.
And I tell you, I remember that, and they'll never know how much we appreciate that. I mean, it really truly meant the world,
Mm-hmm.
for to do that. And there's different things that he did, you know, that Streeter did. Like his father's gravesite, he gave us the gravesite to bury Reggie in.
Mm.
You know, the so it was we were getting along. We were getting
Right.
along.
But it
You know,
was but it it was just, I think it was just there. You know what I'm saying? I mean, me and Keith, we could say anything to each other. You know what I'm saying? And it wouldn't be taken personally. We had that relationship. We was like this. You know what I'm saying? I
Yeah.
mean, but at that time, between the shock and now I'm in a mode. Keith wants to talk about it.
Yeah.
Because just like he went, because you got to understand, we were ride or die. We did everything together.
Right. Right.
So just like he wanted me to go in here and look at this body, he wanted to talk about it, and I could not talk about it. I see, the body was like the worst thing in the world, but sit here and talk about it and relive it, I couldn't do it. So he would call, Boyd would call, and I just wouldn't answer the phone because I didn't have this conversation. And I'll take the blame. That relationship at that time, I just couldn't deal with it. I could, because he wanted to talk, and I can't talk about this.
Yeah.
I,
What did
I
that do
I
to you, Keith?
just can't talk about it
Yeah.
because, again, I still have this blame. I had blame. My wife had blame for sending them to the store. Consuela, she felt like she shouldn't have let Keith do it. Keith, let him go. Everybody felt like, at least, I don't felt like it was our fault.
Right.
the wife would the wife at the time was telling me, she would say things like, I don't know why I listened to you. I should have followed my instinct, and had I followed my instinct, our son would still be here.
Mm.
So in essence, I took it as she was blaming me.
Right.
So when she would say that, I would internalize that and think, why didn't I listen to her? And she would say things like, I'm supposed to be your partner, your helpmate. And so then you take that, okay, and then we're getting phone calls from the district attorney. We're getting phone calls from the police department, and they want to criminally prosecute his son for this.
So let me tell you, in New Jersey, and you don't have, because my son wasn't drinking. He was just, he was speeding. So in New Jersey, if you're speeding on any kind of drugs or anything, you kill somebody, it's a mandatory 6 to 10. Mandatory. So no matter what the circumstances, it's a mandatory 6 to 10. So go ahead, Keith.
So the so they're calling us, and they're calling her, and they're saying that, we're going to pursue this criminally, and we're like, no. I'm like, no, I don't. It's an accident. And they're like, no, you ain't got no truth. We didn't say it's Mr. Eggman versus the Streeters.
Right.
They said it's the state of New Jersey,
Yeah.
versus Streeter. Okay, I mean, you have nothing to do with this. So, me being in law enforcement, and they're talking like second-degree murder.
Right.
Not even vehicle manslaughter. Okay.
Right.
So keep in mind that because I'm in law enforcement, I was the PA3, so I was the head person over the parole division in Riverside area, surrounding area. Well, the accident was in the newspaper, so the press, who I did an interview with not too long ago, recognizes the situation and reaches out to me, and he's now the Press Enterprise is following this story, and they get wind that there may be a possible criminal case. So now they're publishing news articles
Right.
here about the criminal case in New Jersey. And the reason why they are doing that is because of, I believe, because of my title and position here. And so now you have You have the thing of court going back and forth, and then you have me and Carlton both know a lot of people in Riverside.
Right.
So during this time, you have everybody talking about it, everybody giving their own opinion, and everybody adding to the story what happened, versions, all these different versions, and then people
Right.
take. Honestly, it's like people started to take sides.
Right. And then
You
you
know,
got to understand, I myself wouldn't talk about it. So I made things just a whole lot worse by me not wanting to have the conversation, to talk about it, to go through that pain. I did not want to go through that pain. And so I myself made it horrible. And so it kind of encouraged people to go on sides, if that makes sense. You know what I'm saying? I could
Well, I can tell
understand
you,
why.
right. Well, I can tell you all that's how I heard this. I heard the story from somebody in Texas. I was living in Houston at that time. And the story that was told to me was that Streeter's son was drunk and was driving and killed Keith's son. That's how it was said to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so, of course, I'm not one of those type of people that's going to believe a story, especially when I know I can reach out to the person and get it firsthand. And I called Streeter, and he told me, and I was like, damn. And that's when I found out, when I called and talked to Streeter, and then I called a couple other people that I knew. And actually, I think I was visiting California at that time and heard a couple other people talking about it. And that's when I realized what Keith was saying is that, man, people are taking this story, and there's all these different things that whole gossip thing, when you get in some organizations and they'll have people sit in a circle and you have like maybe 15 or 16 people, and they start by telling the first person something, and by the time it gets back to that person, the whole thing has been changed.
Right.
That was the reality. This story had taken on a whole different reality. Some people were painting Streeter's son as like this damn near criminal, you know what I mean, because of the suit from the state against the Streeters. And so, I think we did talk a lot about that, man. We're right there. So talk about what strengthened you all. What were the people that you leaned on? What were the aspects of life? Because Keith, you actually eventually got divorced from Consuela, your first wife,
a year later,
right? And then so going through that, and then the aftermath of all of this, losing a son, then going to a divorce, another very, very difficult thing to go through.
Well,
and then, just talk about kind of some of the years and how you went. And then Streeter, you, as far as not being able to talk about it at all, talk
Mm-hmm.
about how you, let's say, grew, matured, whatever word we want to use, and then got to a point where you were able. Let's go to that aspect.
let me touch on one thing, and this is huge about this. Okay, so when the criminal case was going forward, okay, I get a call from the Press Enterprise, and the Press Enterprise says, "Hey, I want to get a comment from you." And I said, "What?" He said, "The U.S. Marshals is going to issue an arrest warrant for Conk."
Now you got to understand, we have moved to California,
right?
So we didn't find out the reason why. And let me just say this real quick, Keith, and you can finish. The way I found out, because Keith and I weren't having conversations every day, we weren't talking, and that's I take the full blame for all that gossip and stuff. One of Conk's classmates, Coleman, one of his good friends, said he read about in the paper that they're filing charges back in New Jersey. That's how we found out. He got it from the paper in New Jersey that they were filing charges. Go ahead.
So the district attorney, I get a call from the Press Enterprise saying, "We want a comment from you. How do you feel about the fact that the U.S. Marshals?" Well, then I get right after hanging the phone up, we have to have no comment. I get a call from the district attorney, and the district attorney said, "We just want to bring you up to speed. The U.S. we're issuing a arrest extradition warrant for Streeter, that the U.S. Marshals are going to come pick him up. Do not say anything, but we just want to make you informed. Do not, if you're getting, do no comment." So at that point, me and Carlton wasn't talking, but I still loved my friend in the Streeter family, and I thought about it, and I said, "There's no way I'm going to let the U.S. Marshals come kick in his door and take his son to jail." So I called Carlton and said, hey, man, I don't know if you remember this, but I said, the district attorney just told me that U.S. Marshals has an arrest warrant for Conk and that they're coming to get him. And I think at that point, that's when you called your attorney, I guess, and
Well, what happened is I actually called them, and then I got an attorney.
So because of that, and I guess they found out. They then went to court and filed a restraining order saying that me and Streeter could not talk to each other.
Wow.
Yeah.
So in addition to that, now you got the restraining order legally saying me and him our families are not allowed to communicate at all during this whole process. Okay. And so then you started getting things as far as I was going to have this last part on this is that people started saying things like Reggie's trying to send his son, Keith's trying to send his son to prison for life. And I'm like, that's not the case.
Right.
I put Boyd on the phone one time when I called the DA just to tell the DA I was actually advocating saying, give him the minimum possible, let him go, let's try probation and all that. So I was actually advocating strongly for him behind the scenes on that, even though we couldn't communicate. But I get divorced. Okay, I'll move on.
Before you move on, Keith, just to let you know what happened during the accident. There was another BMW in the accident that Conk sideswiped before he hit the tree. Before they were going hard. What charge were they doing, Keith?
Second-degree murder.
Second-degree murder. Well, the guy stopped in the middle of the street with no stop sign, and then Conk tried to go around him, and then that's when he hit him and hit the tree. Well, that guy was high. So him being high, he stopped at that intersection with no stop sign, which caused Conk to go around him, and so therefore they went from second-degree murder to they ended up negotiating it, or what is it called? Plea bargaining it.
Mm-hmm.
To
manslaughter.
No mandatory. So yeah. I think it was like 6 years, no mandatory. So what happens is he can get out as early as 18 months. And then since he has no priors, he can get into this program where he lived in a halfway house. So that's what our attorney said. And we're like, okay, good. We can do that. Well, and I don't know if I should say this is before in the story. So what ended up happening is we did plea bargain. He went to jail, but come to find out that from the charge they gave him, he wasn't able to be in that program. So he had to at least do the 18 months before he was eligible for parole.
Well, and I'll move forward to the healing part, man, because me and the wife didn't get along after that, man. We blamed each other. And we couldn't connect. The connection was broken, and it was irreparable. But during this time, man, I say to people who've gone through grief is that I had to get into counseling, man. You know, I had to go to therapy. I had to get in counseling, and you know, a lot of people said some stupid things to me, man, during that time. You know. Compared to I lost my great grandfather. I know how you feel. I mean, well, my cousin died last week, man. I'm feeling you. I feel the pain.
Yeah, right.
Just a lot of stupid things. But I realized that their ignorance. It wasn't no ill intent behind it.
Right.
But I started reading books, man, and I started reaching for the Bible. I started strengthening. I felt like I was in a spiritual battle. My soul was truly in a spiritual battle. Either I was going to forgive and show love, or I was going to be bitter and hate.
Right.
And I knew this. I knew this in my spirit. I knew that bitter and hate was going to destroy me because I was angry. And even though I loved Carlton, I was angry with him because he said the truth to me one day. And it bothered the hell out of me, but it was right. One day I was talking to him and I needed to talk to him. Carlton told me, he said, man, this is bigger than you. You can't handle this. You got to give it to God. And, and when he told me that, I was angry. I was like, how dare you tell me just give this to God? I can't handle that.
Right, right,
To be
right.
real, but he was telling me the truth.
Yeah.
That was the only thing for me because I couldn't honestly, and
So,
I couldn't deal with it.
so I started going to different scriptures. I started reading the Bible. I started asking God why. I started really just trying to understand my spiritual growth or my lack of. Why did I not have the faith I had to where I could deal with this and accept this? Because I had to do with the acceptance. And I found a scripture, man, that said the godly sometimes die young, and no one knows the reason why, other than God is saving them from an evil to come. And I kept asking God, why? When I read that scripture, God gave me the answer why. And so when he gave me that answer why, I had no point to start accepting it. Also, I felt like I was just existing. I wasn't living.
Right.
I wasn't living. I was a walking zombie. I was just going through the motions. I wasn't feeling anything. And I started talking to God, and I just started really reaching out and going to counseling. I felt like no one understood my pain. I felt like no one could understand what I was going through. I was all alone. And then I had the guilt that it was my fault. And a person once told me, they said, the turning point for me is when they said, I felt like all the sins that I had done, that God was punishing me. I felt like God was punishing me for all the things that I did. And I remember saying, God, I'm sorry. I know I did some bad things, but why do you got to punish me to this extent?
Mm.
Why did this extent?
Right.
Whatever I've done couldn't have been this bad. But a therapist told me, said, you think Reggie's death had anything to do between you and God? That was between Reggie and God, not you and God.
Yeah.
And so I started to realize that I wanted to live, man. I wanted to die, but I didn't really want to die. I just wanted the pain to stop.
Right.
And so, and people who hurt like that, I'm sure you can understand when I make a statement like that. Well, some people can understand it, you know.
That's
I
right.
didn't want to die. I just wanted the pain to stop.
Right.
So at the 1 year mark, I used to talk to Reggie every day and record it. At the 1 year mark, I said to myself, if I don't work on getting better, it's not going to get better. So every time I would cry, I would try and think of something funny that me and him did together. Every time I thought of something that was sad, I tried to think of something positive and something good, a memory that me and him shared. And I tried to do that. And I realized that, Keely, when I tell you, people who go through this, they want to say time heals all wounds.
That's right.
It doesn't.
That's right.
It doesn't. You have to work at it.
Come on, man. Say that again.
You have to.
Yeah.
You have to work at getting better.
That's right.
I heard Joel Osteen one time talk about getting back in the game of life. That's how I took it. You can either sit on the sideline because the game's still going on.
That's right.
You can either sit on the sideline or you can say, injured and all, coach, put me back in the game.
Right.
Okay. And
Player.
I had to tell myself, put me in the game, coach. Put me back in the game. Because in life, we got first, like in sports, you got first, second, third, fourth quarter. Okay. At that stage in my life, I felt like I was in the second quarter of my life. I didn't want to spend the third and fourth quarter on the bench. I wanted to get back in the game.
Right.
So I had to work at that, man. I had to work on trying to be happy. Work at scriptural, reading scriptures. Not to go too all of this, man, but I remember shortly after Reggie passed and I was divorced, some friends of mine, their child passed away. Other people's children passed away, and they kept coming to me. They were coming to me for advice. And I kept thinking, why are you coming to me?
Yeah.
You know the pain I'm in?
Right.
But then I realized that God said, I will help you so that you can help others.
Right. There you go.
And so I took it as almost like maybe it was a calling. Maybe it was a calling for me to be there for other people in need. And that's what I started doing. I started trying to repair things, you know. And I would say this: my repair with Streeter, you know, to fast forward this is that me and Carlton went from best friends and being the groomsman in my wedding. And let me tell you, man, people thrive on ugliness. People thrive on people not getting along. People thrive when me and Carlton went on that.
They want us not to be.
They didn't want us to be friends.
No.
Okay?
Hold on. I think you all left a little somebody. We got to make sure this is clear.
Okay.
We're talking about Keith's recent wedding just a few months ago. So you can talk about that. So this is why I was saying that this is such a beautiful love story, because Streeter was Carlton's best man.
Was
Wedding.
Was Reggie's. You said
Streeter
me
With my
was the best man in Reggie Keith Edmonds' wedding just a few months ago. I'll let them get to the specifics, but that's why it's such a beautiful story. Because when
we
I
went from being best
Streeter
friends.
was in his wedding as his best man, I said, wow, that is such a great example of what we typically don't see in black men. Because typically in a situation like this that we have discussed tonight, you see black men never speak again, or just be around each other and existing around each other, but not being good friends again. And so that is, I just wanted to fill that in, Keith, because you kind of moved on, and I don't think everybody understood that. So we're talking about your marriage. What was the date?
September 26th. Why you put me in the spot like that?
Of 2020.
Of 2020, yeah. You know, man, COVID time, man. You know, the reason why I had to think about the date, just so you know, is because of the pandemic, it kept having changed.
I'm
Man,
with you, dog.
so many times.
I'm with you, dog.
It changed a lot of days. Okay, it changed a lot.
So
You know, he was the best man. Okay,
Right.
and understand he's my best friend.
Yes.
Right.
So, you know, I can tell you this: God restores, God builds, God. It's strictly by the grace of God. Because what people understand is this: people say, "How can you?" Let me tell you, when me and Carl started being friends, I actually ran into his son, little Conk. I ran into Conk in a movie theater. Hadn't seen him in years, since the funeral. And I see him, and he looks afraid. He literally looked afraid when he saw me.
He was.
And the Spirit of God told me, and I walked up to Conk, and I gave him a hug, and I said, "Hey, man, I love you. I forgive you. Now forgive yourself." That's what I said to him.
That's powerful.
And,
Huge. That's huge.
you know, because I could tell that he was carrying this weight on him.
Yeah.
You know, and so when the person I was with, she goes, "I don't know what you said to him, but whatever it was, he looks different. He looks better. He looks different because he looked afraid."
Every year, Conk goes to Reggie's grave by himself. It's not something that, you know, it's something that he does every single year. Didn't you see him one time there, Keith, or something?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And,
Yeah, so,
and just to keep on, Conk before the accident, mentally he was fine, but now he suffers depression from that, because it's a thing that, you know, I'm talking nightmares. You know, it's, you know, he had not a therapist, a psychologist when we were in New Jersey, and it was good. But then when we came here, it was a problem. It was hard for him to find somebody. He just didn't trust anybody, and he really needs a psychologist, because right now, you know, he goes into depression, and especially around Reggie's death. That's when it's just the worst. And he just it's like he's bipolar. The depression is still there. And, you know, it's something that he can't shake. But now that was Keith's side. As far as my side,
Well, let me put you on pause for just a second, Streeter.
all right.
I just want to say this, bro. We have to always understand the power of words.
Mm-hmm.
right? So you, I, and everybody else that's a part of his life has to stop saying can't.
Right.
My suggestion is to you, as my brother that I love,
Right.
is to buy him the Unapologetic Black Guide to Mental Health. I'm only on page 20, bro,
Mm-hmm.
and it has done an amazing thing. We're reading 4 pages a day. And it is,
It's
I mean,
done.
just 4 days that we've read, 5 days that we've read, it's
Mm-hmm.
been truly amazing. And I think it may be something that can help him where he goes in and he starts seeing some things that he has to do for himself, right? Because another person can do a lot. But both of you, what I heard is that there were things that had to happen within yourself, right?
Right.
And then
Right.
the last thing that I'll say before I give it back to you is that we have this saying, and it's not a saying, it's actual mathematic facts, right? It takes 8 minutes and 20 seconds or 500 seconds for the sunlight from the sun to reach us here on the earth. And it also takes 8 minutes and 20 seconds or 500 seconds for us to have the blood flow go from the brain to the tip of your toe and then back to the brain. If you tell somebody good news, if you give somebody the word of God, if you give somebody some uplifting information and it lasts for 500 seconds or 8 minutes and 20 seconds, or if you put a thought in a person's mind and it lasted them and they concentrated on it that long, you will see a countenance change in that person. So I just wanted to mention that, Keith, because what you said is powerful. And a lot of times we don't look at things from the scientific perspective. Yes, there's some things that can't be explained, but there's some things that can be. And sometimes we just are ignorant of that specific information. I'm not saying you were, but I'm saying that reality that you said something to Conk and whoever you were with saw the change in his countenance. That is real. That is actual scientific information about what the beauty of good information, good knowledge, good wisdom, and good quality conversation does to the countenance and the overall benefit of the body. So go ahead, bro. I just wanted to mention that.
Okay. As far as me, the only way I was going to get through this was through my faith.
Yes.
And that's death is one thing that I've never been able to handle. I've never been able to handle it. So in that case, I just, like I told Keith, the only way to me to handle this is I told God, listen to me. This right here is too much for me. I can't deal with this here. This is your problem. And that's what my Bible tells me to do. It tells me, like, look, just give it. And I honestly, I like just and it doesn't sound right, but I just gave it to God. And every time Satan would attack me, I just give it back. I'm like, nope, wrong person. You can't. And so now it helped me just period. Now I'm able to deal with death. Now I can walk by caskets. Do I prefer to? No. Now I can go by caskets. Now because I
were able to sleep.
yes.
Comfort was out.
Oh,
After that.
That's a good point. Before the accident, my wife and I couldn't go to sleep until my son came home. Once we heard the door, subconsciously, then we could go to sleep.
Wow.
After the accident, I realized that our children are a gift. They're God's child. That's God's child. No control. So there's nothing that I can do. So after the accident, I was able to go to sleep because I know that, God has control of this. There's nothing I can do. So when he's out, that's God's child, and I can just pray and he'll take care of him. But for me, I had to just give it away. And that's for me, that was the easiest part. And now that was very difficult for me to do. Let me rephrase that. And now I'm so much better with death. Because before I was.
Let me just get it, because I know you guys are going through it. Is this okay? When it comes to grief, I can say this is that those who've lost children, from my own experience, it's like for people described of losing a limb. I've heard people describe in counseling sessions of someone who's lost an arm, and they feel like they feel like they can feel their arm still, but when they reach for something, it's not there.
Right.
but they feel like they can feel it. I felt that. I felt like I could feel it. I felt like it's you remember the the you remember the feeling of it. But I can say this is that you always know that everything is your ability to look for the bright side, your ability to look for the positive. You have to focus on the positive. You have to focus on the good, because the good in life, the life that God has given us,
It's what
it's
Achilles
to,
about the 8
it's
minutes
to,
and 2
it's to
seconds.
be it's to be it's the God it's for us to say it's for us to live abundantly, and that if you seek God, seek your faith, and I respect all faiths, because I respect all faiths if they're about goodness and kind and mercy and love. They may have different beliefs in what I have. They may have different beliefs on their Savior, but I respect them.
Yes.
So I'm just saying that if they have goodness and kindness and mercy and love, just know that whoever their higher power is, that if they seek their higher power and they seek that for me it was Jesus Christ, for me. But you're not gonna say that if they reach that and they really truly continue to pursue that, God will be there. God will carry you.
That's
When,
right.
when the scriptures are real, when I don't know if it was scripture or if it was a saying, because I seen them on pictures when they say God said, I'm with you, and the person that I was there and only one footprint in the sand, they said that's
Right,
when I
right.
carried you, and I mean
Thanks,
that
Chris.
kind of thing is true, that God will carry you, God will be
Yes.
there. But I would say this again, it's gonna take work. It's going to take work. It's
Yes.
going to take pain. It's going to take talking about it. It's going to say, we have people who, and the reason why I had to talk about it, Carlton, is because that's the only way you work through it is talk about it.
Right.
That's why groups are so good. You got to get it out. You got to talk about it. You got to talk about what you feel, and Keita, I commend you on having this, man, because to be honest, this is the first time I really talked about it openly
Yes.
outside of
Yeah.
counseling
We
sessions.
never, we
You know,
never,
I
we never had this conversation.
Yeah.
Even
Well,
though,
that's why I told you all at the beginning, man. I'm truly thankful. I know it took some courageousness. It took some bravery because you guys hadn't talked about it before, like in a public setting. But I think it's so powerful for people in general, but especially Black men and Black people who typically don't want to have these type of conversations in public. You know what I mean? And I think the other aspect of it that is powerful is that I'm sitting here listening to two friends that I've had most of my life. And I'm looking and watching over years because I've seen them in the type of lifestyle that none of us were proud of.
none of us.
And like I've told you all on many of occasions, if some of you had seen me when I was in college or even in medical school, and maybe even after medical school, you'd be like, man, I'll never hire that dude as my doctor.
Right.
But it's the growth factor. And I've seen these two men grow in Christianity. And so I will never let anybody tell me that a Christian is not true and that people can't grow and reach a much better place through Christianity. I've seen it happen. And these are just two of my examples. I got plenty more. But for the sake of today's conversation, there is a verse in the Quran that says the Jews and the Sabians and the Christians will have their day with the Lord. So for a Muslim to say that a Christian ain't whatever, whatever, and for Christians to say Muslims ain't whatever, whatever, we really need to stop doing that. We can't. That's not a reality. Let me not say what you're gonna do. I'm saying I don't do that.
Right.
I've always.
I don't do that either. I don't do that.
Me
And
either.
one of the greatest compliments I've ever gotten from any of my friends was when Keith told me just a few weeks ago. He said, "Bro, I've never heard you disrespect my faith. I've never heard you say anything that would make me think that you had something negative to say about what I call my religion."
No.
Streeter and I had a little miscommunication at some point where he
Right.
thought I did that, but after we talked about it, he realized that that may have been something. It may have been something that I said
Mhm.
that didn't go across with him correctly, but it's not what I meant. It wasn't my motive.
Well,
And
you,
that's
I
why
don't.
we're still friends, and that's why we can be honest, like you guys said before about being honest with each other. That's
Mhm.
been our relationship from the get-go. We've never been fake with each other. We don't play around words. If we have something to say to each other, we do.
Right.
When we have to correct each other, we do. And we as we have grown in our own faith, them in Christianity and I in Islam, we have continued to be that and have that type of friendship where we will do that. So you all can finish by saying whatever you want to, but what I want to ask is, how did it feel after all that you all have been through on that beautiful day, September 26, 2020? I saw the pictures. I wasn't there, but I saw the pictures that Rick shared with me. That was probably one of the most beautiful sceneries I've ever seen in a wedding.
Right.
But what was going through you all's head? How did you feel? What was it like on that day for Keith, you to be marrying your beautiful wife that I met, and then Streeter, for you to be there for your best friend? And I'm sure for all three of you all to look out in the crowd and see
Mhm.
Annette, your other beautiful friend, and that beautiful relationship. And how was that as the end to this beautiful love story? The
No,
best love
let me tell
story.
you about me. Um, I was actually very excited about it, and I know there's a lot of people that don't like the fact that that Keith and I are ace boom coon. So before the wedding, I put something on Facebook. Keith and I probably have 1,000 friends that are the same. Some of the people, the haters or whatever. So I put on Facebook that, and I had all the pictures and video. And I said, guess what? My boy Reginald Keith Edmond is getting married, and
Yeah.
I'm the best man. For all the haters out there, and I'm the best man.
Yeah.
So for anybody who wanted to hate, I felt like I needed to put that out there.
Yeah.
Because me and Keith talk to each other every day. Like, what you doing, dog? What you doing? You going here? You working today? We honestly are I would say closer.
Yes.
Oh yeah, we're closer. I have to say this too: is that your friends and the people you keep. You're like, Rick Boyd played a big part. Just
Right.
keeping our friendship together and talking to us and being a sounding board and
Because he's
never.
I was gonna say Boyd was still friends with me, even though Keith and I weren't talking. Boyd was still friends with me, not like we were, but then he was still friends with Keith.
Yeah, it's
right.
you have good friends, man, and good people. But let me tell you this, man. In my heart,
Hey, I'm gonna have him while we talking about. I'm gonna have him poke his head in here real quick. Come on, man. This is friendship for many years, brothers and sisters. Go ahead, bend down, say you, bro.
Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you for your head. Come on down here so we can see you. That's Rick that we're talking about, brothers and sisters. So this is a brotherhood. These four guys right here have been brothers for 40 plus years, man.
Yeah,
pretty Ricky, what we call him.
I can say this, man. For me, it was having Streeter and Boyd there, and my friends there. It was a new beginning for me. I felt like, man, truly, it was a new beginning. A new beginning on life, a new beginning on love. And that, and it wouldn't be the same if I didn't have my boys there with me. It wouldn't have been the same. So, it is a true love story because I love my friends.
Yes.
I'm very blessed to have the friends I've had my whole life. It's truly a blessing from God to be able to have like people like you, Akili, and be able to see people like Ultimates and feel like you never missed a beat, or some of our friends, that we've been there. We've been through the fire. We've been through it, and
at 50, man, all of us in our 50s, man, we can say I love you. We can hug each other. We can do things without any trepidation. But we didn't necessarily always have that. There were some times I can honestly say I had trouble telling another black man I love you.
Right.
I had trouble hugging another black man for a long period of time. We hit each other and move off, but I mean those trepidations are gone. And I think those of you, I'm looking at the comments. I think everybody was touched. I think everybody realizes while I'm calling this the greatest love story ever. There are a lot of people that say they have learned and been touched by this story tonight. And that's why I wanted to have it. We are talking about mental health, right? And mental health is not a reality of that man on the side of the road with the sign talking crazy or talking to something. It's our everyday reality of how we deal with the ups and downs of life that is our mental health. And I'm praying that this show can help us all take a little step in the direction of having better mental health. So it's almost time to close out the show. What do you all want to say as closing comments?
I do want to say that Keith Consuela, Reggie's mom, and my wife, they currently are in Bible study together. So not only are Keith and I best friends, but Consuela and my wife Annette are currently in Bible study together every Tuesday. So they currently have a relationship. I personally, just my personal opinion, Consuela, I didn't think that would ever heal, the
Right.
relationship with Consuela, because it's just, it's a mother's son. And so, but they do the Bible study and they talk, and when she goes out of town, Annette watches her house, and so it's getting back. So I wanted to say that. And
Shout out to Annette, Carlton's wife.
Yeah. Well, I want to say, I would just say this, man, is that I think one of the greatest gifts that God can place on our hearts, man, is the gift of forgiveness.
right,
And it's amazing of what you can achieve and what you can obtain when you forgive and truly forgive, because God forgave us for
what
all
you
the stuff we've
gain.
done.
That's right.
And to be able to, not only say you forgive, but truly have forgiveness in your heart and truly mean it. Where it's just, and I think that that's why me, Rick, Streeter, another brother, that's why we've remained friends for so long, is because we don't hold things too long. We forgive each other. Yeah, we
Right.
get mad,
Yeah.
and go to the other person and all that kind of stuff. But
Right.
we generally have forgiveness because we know that we generally have a love for each other. And so that's just what I would end it on, is that always have room in your heart for forgiveness.
Yeah. And this guy that's behind me right now, he did have a lot more to do with this story than we went into specifics of. But
A whole
over
lot.
the years, we all are good friends.
Right.
But Rick was really the one that kept me up on a lot of what happened, and as it was happening, because of course, sometimes you don't want to call nobody and talk to them about the difficulty struggles, like when Carlton's son was
And,
back in
and we don't
New
want to
Jersey
talk about
going through his situation. It was
Right.
tough for him to talk about. And so, Rick, I would call and get information from Rick instead of calling Streeter to make him
Right.
talk about things again. So again, I started off talking about how all three of these guys were a little bit older than me. So I looked up to them. They were guys that did things to help keep me in line and keep me looking at something positive. And I'm thankful. And I'm also very thankful that it has lasted for as long as it has lasted, because as Streeter and Keith just said, there was a time in my life where I didn't have any friend. All of my close friends I had literally physically had fights with. And I know that's crazy. Because it hasn't been that way in the last few years, but to a certain degree,
I remember.
Fight to make friends.
right? But the reality is, I'm saying that because we've been through so much together. We've been through ups, downs, divorces, losses of children, right? Loss of jobs, unemployment, all different type of things. But the one thing that has always been consistent is that I'm sure that none of our relationships started on anything superficial.
Right.
Our relationship didn't start because you had a big house and I lived in a shack.
Right.
Well, you had this nice car and I was walking around in holy shoes. Our relationship started just in the honesty of just brotherhood, and it's maintained itself and grown, and we've gotten stronger and better relationships through the fire of life.
And
So
last
thank
thing,
you, Carlton,
real
Streeter.
quick, last
Yeah,
thing,
go ahead.
Keely, and to what Keith said, people don't realize, and it took me a long time to realize, forgiveness is for yourself.
That's right.
Once I forgave myself for letting him do that, then I was able to do it. So if Boyd was to wrong me or you were to wrong me and I was to forgive you, that would release it from off of me. So when people don't realize when you're forgiving somebody, you're not letting them off the hook. You're letting yourself off the hook.
That's right. So again, a beautiful show. The greatest love story ever for me to see these two dudes right here on these pictures for this wedding on September 26th. I mean, it was major for me. I mean, and it was major because I was so joyous to see that. That's all. I just enjoyed it because of the joyous nature of the occasion. But to see two guys that I respect, two guys that I love, have their relationship back like that, it was beautiful for me to see. And so thank you all for coming and joining this show tonight. Really appreciate it. I pray that you got something from tonight's show. I pray that you got some news that you can use.
Right.
I also pray that you continue working on your health. And so tonight, specifically, we're talking about good physical health and good mental health. It takes work. Whether you want physical health or mental health, it's going to take work. So please keep working hard on your health. And until the next time, you all have a wonderful rest of your evening and the rest of your week. Peace.
Peace.
Peace, love, and soul.